Right. All right. Thank you all for joining us today for the HMSC Summer Seminar. My name is Mariana Hinojosa, and I am the Special Programs and Course Support Coordinator here at Hatfield Marine Science Center in Newport, Oregon. I will be your host for today's talk, and for those online, we have Jamie as our hybrid host and assistant. So if you have any technical issues, can't hear or see anything, please let her know in the chat. We will also be handling questions at the end of today's talk. So for those online, please drop your questions in the chat at any time, and then at the end of the talk, I will walk around with the microphone so we can ask our questions and those online can hear them. Also, if you're in the room, please make sure you sign in on your way out if you didn't already. That way I can validate buying all the coffee and cookies. And we will be recording this event and it will be posted on the HMSC website soon. So a couple of announcements before we get started. Next week, there will be no seminar. So this is our final seminar for the summer 2025 session. Instead, we will have the Coastal Intern Symposium happening Thursday, August 21st from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Summer interns will be presenting posters on their research and sharing about their summer projects on a variety of ocean-related topics. Join us in the Marine Studies building to check out their posters. The Hatfield Visitor Center is also hosting a special talk this Saturday, August 16th at 12 p.m. in the Visitor Center. Dr. Dean Gushi will take us behind the scenes of a National Geographic expedition and will describe an expedition to Antarctica on assignment to do a story that centers on how emperor penguins avoid predation by their major predator, the leopard seal. The $5 entrance fee does apply, but it also grants you access to the Visitor Center before or after. And finally, this is our last seminar, as I mentioned. So research seminars will pick back up on September 18th with Dr. Chris Langdon. Same place, same time. All right, now the reason we are all here. Dr. Luhui Whitebear is an assistant professor in Indigenous Studies at Oregon State University and former center director of the Kago Ihit, thank you, Mana Ina Haas. As a four-time OSU alumni, she holds 2 bachelor degrees in ethnic studies and anthropology. She also earned her master's degree in interdisciplinary studies, ethnic studies, women, gender, and sexuality studies, and queer studies, and her PhD in women, gender, and sexuality studies. We are ever so excited to have her here today to talk with us about living through and with Indigenous science. So please give her a warm welcome. The floor is yours.
Now it's on. Cool. The sky and the trees in the sky are my teachers. Who was your first teacher? How do I tell you it was the trees and water and sky? How do I tell you it was mothers and aunties and uncles and elders? How do I tell you for you to understand? Memories. The principal called my mom. She keeps saying rocks are alive. My mom replies, she was taught they have a spirit too. Can you tell her to keep those thoughts to herself? Settler interruption of Indigenous teaching, walking down cold halls, sitting in cold seats, no daydreaming out the window. Columbus was a hero. We study trees and rocks and water. They don't teach us. Settler attempts to crush Indigenous knowledge. Teaching. My children and I stand at the edge of the Pacific, looking out across the channel to Limu, tobacco clutched in palms, carried away by salt air, an offering to our homelands. Cars passing by on Highway 101, an offering of gratitude to earth and ocean and plants, an offering to the ancestors and our lands and waters, an offering passed down from elders to my parents, to me, to my children, to the future. In moments that stand still, we understand. No matter where we are or who is around us, we take time for this. Returning. Some teachings are ours to give, and some teachings are ours to keep, surrounded by story and braided into all we know. Some days I sit and wonder how many miss it all. in the hustle of capitalism. Some days I sit and wonder what I am missing. Then I remember that our stories are always there waiting, carried by clouds, curled into ferns, drawn into stars, dripping off leaves, gathering into pools of water, reflecting our teachings back to us when we are ready to return to them. I wanted to start with that poem that I wrote a couple years ago for inclusion in a book about traditional ecological knowledge. And this picture of me as a baby with my first teachers' trees. Those are willow trees. And my mom always reminds everybody that those were my first teachers. She talks about it all the time still, even though I'm like, how old am I? And she reminds everybody that those were my first teachers, and that's how I was brought up to understand the world and understand what science is. My name is Luhui Whitebear. I'm enrolled with the coastal band of the Chumash Nation. I also have Waztecan and Cochimi ancestry. I grew up here on the coast with my dad who raised me's people, the Confederate Tribes of Siletz, so I'm pretty involved over here. I graduated from Taft High School, just right up the road, so I am definitely from rural coastal Oregon, and went over to Oregon State University to study marine biology after high school. Could not pass standardized testing in college, and so I was like, I guess I'm not good at science, and I really was excited about ethnic studies and switched over to that for my bachelor's degree, my first one, and then got my anthropology degree 10 years later, and then my master's and PhD while I worked at OSU and mothering. And so science has always been near and dear to me. I didn't understand that what it meant to hold those kind of knowledges, because I'm always told like, oh, you're not good at it because you can't pass tests, right, in college. And so I wasn't considered a scientist, but I do hold the teachings of Indigenous science very closely to me. A lot of people have more recently that I work with and research teams at OSU are like, don't say you just do Indigenous science, say you do Indigenous science, because there's no just about it, right? That's what it is. And it interacts with everybody else. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids plus one I brought in, and I have 2 dogs. And so that's my family, and I'm really proud of all of them. And so that's my introduction, a little bit about me. All these pictures are ones I took. So this one's on Mary's Peak on the way up the hill. The other one was at Seal Rock. And so this is a question for y'all just to think about, like, and I was gonna have you, how many people have heard the term Indigenous science in classes and publications? Do y'all feel like you have a good solid understanding of what Indigenous science is? Perhaps, maybe a little bit. So I'll give you, so just think about what you have heard about it, and I'm going to give you a definition that I put together based on my own understandings of the teachings I was brought up with, plus reading things like Fresh Banana Leaves and Braiding Sweetgrass, Gathering Moss, all the like native science people and some, right? And there's plenty more. Those were just a couple examples. So this is how I'm talking about Indigenous science. It's the knowledge systems passed down generationally that are grounded in our cultural context, localized knowledge, and relationships with the natural world that inform our practices and understandings of the world. The relationship part is super important because if you're not in relation with the world around you, the understandings are a little bit different. And so you hear a lot of things like about native time, thinking about seasons, and there's also jokes about native time of what that is too, arriving, but it is arriving when you're supposed to. That's technically what it is. But the main part is the relationships are what grounds it with each other and with our ancestors and the natural world. And a lot of times, especially in academia with research, it's like you have to separate yourself away from it, and it becomes more like disconnected. And I won't go into a long talk about like native philosophies around delocalizing and stuff like that. But what I will say is that in my decolonizing methodologies class, we talk a little bit, it's a focus on science and science research in that one in particular. And we talk a lot about the already bias that exists in saying you can't have a personal relationship with your research for it to be unbiased. That's already its own form of bias because you're privileging that separation as legitimate knowledge, and then the relationships are not. And so that's already its own form of bias within research, is how we talk about it in that class. And so everything from understanding, and I use this picture because there's a lot going on here. There's some native like ingenuity going on because we didn't have any blocks or hole things in the ground. So we used some more wood and had to flip them because they were catching on fire, cooking salmon in the woods. but, um, but you have to know how to use fire in order to cook like this. You have to understand how to tell temperatures. You have to understand food safety in the context of how do you do food safety without thermometers. When do you catch salmon? All of those things, like how do you use cedar? How long do you soak wood for? All of those things are embedded in localized knowledges around how they're practiced in that context. So that's why I use that picture. And plus I like cooking salmon, so there's that too. And so for this one, I wanted to talk about a couple of examples of the impacts of Western science on Indigenous people. And I really wanted to remind you all that Indigenous people are not a monolith. Everybody has their own experiences and their own experiences with science. I've had some very direct impacts with science that have been disruptive, that I'm going to share a little bit about as well. And then I'm going to share a little bit later about some projects I'm working on with some colleagues that are researchers at OSU. Um, This picture right here, does anybody ever been to Siletz? Couple people, yeah. It's right down the road. We're on Siletz land. So this is a picture of the dance house. It was constructed in 1996. It was the first dance house since they all got burned down by the ABA or the Indian agents in the 1880s. And so this was like the return of this kind of technology of how to use split planks to make houses like this, as well as the return of a lot of the dances and stuff. And so this is a lot of my grounding as a person, is remembering that this is super recent, right? That all of this is returned, and the acceptance of even our knowledge systems and outside of native spaces. The first one I wanted to talk to you all about is the way that that modern technology, especially when it comes to extraction and consumption, can impact Indigenous communities and people. The tribe I'm enrolled with is not federally recognized, so we don't have any federal protections. And my first home, when I was that little kid right there in that picture, was in that pictures over on the left side. There was nothing there developed like that when I lived in the canyon. And my mom, my dad, my aunties and uncles, they kind of were rebuilding our community in this area. And it was in the early 80s where Exxon was like, this looks like a really great place for an oil refinery. And so they did all their research around like sediments and all the cultural sites. I found this environmental impact statement. I don't even know how I found it, but I found it like during the pandemic. And it's actually it's literally talks about my family in here, like their names and everything. But this was the revised one after they already kicked us out. But there was a couple of things going on here. One is that the oil industry relied on modern technologies to fuel our driving, right? And so, which leads to climate change, as we know, as well as other things. It's not just gasoline, it's also like big beef and all other things. But the Exxon was able to work with Science Applications Incorporated, is who prepared this report, and basically remove us from our homes. And so instead of being able to stay there, grow up connected to place in the way that my parents hoped I would, we had to leave. This statement was published, this revised one, after we had already moved from the canyon. They developed the oil refinery. The exit for where it's at is called Mariposa Reina, which means butterfly queen in Spanish. There was monarch butterfly nesting grounds there that also got destroyed. And so there's like this, I have a really strong connection with monarch butterflies for that reason. And the other parts around it is, this was 10 years ago, I think it's spring, it was May, I think, when the anniversary, the 10-year anniversary was, of this huge spill that's also in Gaviota, just a little bit south from when they were pulling oil out. And the cleanup has been significant. That was at Refugio Beach, our state beach, and it's still a mess down there, and that was 10 years ago. And they're trying to reopen those pipelines too. The picture on the bottom is actually from even farther south from another oil spill on our coastline. In that one, I didn't know that there was, it wasn't even the same year. I can't remember what year it was, but it was still so much oil in the sand. And we went down there and just had oil all over. I was like, this is not good, like to have this on our bodies. And I was like, I really wanted some Dawn dish soap because I remember, the commercials with the poor birds with the dish soap. I was thinking about them. I was like, I need Dawn, but we didn't have any. It took forever to get oil. I don't know if anybody's been exposed to oil before, but like crude oil like that on your body, it's not good and stuff. Or if you help clean up, I give you a lot of props for that because those animals need that. So this is some of the impacts, not only the removal, but the continued pollution of our waters and our connections to the plants and animals down there. The picture on the top is when I go down to Santa Barbara with my kids, we always stop by this plaque. It's the Friendship Fountain dedicated to our tribe that's in Santa Barbara at the wharf, and we understand what those symbols mean. Most people don't, like the connections to the ocean and the earth and the sky and the directions. Those are dolphins that are going around it. And what pulls everything together. And so we always take a picture like this. We have some over time. Everybody's hands got bigger, and but this is like our cultural connection to place. But we also have these other damaging impacts that have occurred in our homelands. This is also connected to an article I'm currently writing about sacrifice zones on indigenous communities that talks about oil extraction, uranium mining, and lithium mining. And so if we think about, okay, we need to look at all this research going in about how do we deal with climate change because of our reliance on fossil fuels. And there's this huge push towards quote unquote green energy without looking at the impacts and whose lands are being displaced, who's being displaced from their lands. This area is really special to me for a couple of reasons. One of them is the ceremonial connections I have here, but it's another area I write about as well with Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins for Indigenous feminist work. But with this one, I took these two pictures when I was down there last month. I have other ones too over time. But if you don't know much about where like solar panels and EV cars, where their batteries come from, it comes from places like this, where people think are considered like a wasteland. The same thing with uranium mining, what happened with that. There's the quote, I can't remember who said it right now, but there's no land is a wasteland. Like this is always somebody's land, somebody lives there. And right now, the amount of water it takes for all of this to happen is really threatening the McDermott community, not just the tribes in that area, but also the farmers. I'm going to take you to this picture in case you don't know what lithium mining looks like. So the McDermott caldera, it contains what is thought to be the largest lithium deposit in the entire world. And when I heard that, at first it was North America. I was like, that sounds really bad for the tribes. And they said the world. I was like, that sounds even worse for the tribes. We know what direction this is going. That picture that I just showed you where that gas station was is about right here, somewhere right around here. Or maybe it's somewhere right around here. That picture is not in McDermott. I use that as a comparison. That's what lithium mining looks like when what it does to the land. And so they have three mines. These two are the ones I was going to point out. This one is currently in trouble for illegally taking water, and this one is OSU is invested in this one. So it's kind of complicated for me to on this topic. So they're involved with Jindalee. And so that Thacker Pass one is right behind this mountain. And so I took this picture because it shows the layering. I'm writing this article because it's like, this is what extraction has done to my people's, ancestral people's homelands. The answer is let's just go green solar. And that's just making it worse for another community. It's not actually helping anything in some regards, because what are we going to do without water too? And so I took this picture because it has the Tesla charging station, Chevron gas station, and then it has a lithium mine behind them. And I just really appreciated the layering for the article I'm writing, but I wanted to share it with you all today too. And I didn't put it in this presentation, but the third one I'm talking about is uranium, because it's being considered the new green energy, and that's really bad too, but that's a whole nother conversation. I only have so much time, and I'm already over time, so I'm gonna keep going. But so these are some of the negative impacts of like science research, looking for alternatives to really significant problems society across the world is facing when it comes to climate change. No easy answer. And somebody was like, there's always a cost for everything. And I was like, but it's always Indigenous people. That's the cost. And at what point when we say no, is that going to get listened to? And it's like, no, oh, too bad, sorry, thank you for all of this, all these resources, and sorry about your future with clean water and stuff. So with that, I'm going to switch to another poem because it got really heavy for me. So I structured this on purpose like this. I'm going to share another poem for you. This one's also the first one's in the TEK book. This one's in a book about coastal climate and resiliency. And it's called Dreams of the Pacific. So just think of where my little kid pictures were too for some of this and here. 1, traveling. My eyes closed to crashing waves, eucalyptus dreams, enveloped by sheets of velvet sand, warmth, soft caress of monarch wings. In the distance, the breeze carries my name, calling to me. I open my eyes with renewed strength. 2, remembering. Wings of condor brush against the sky, limu covered with gold and orange poppy canvas strokes, ancestral homes splashed with sea foam and mist, abalone shimmers through wisps of burning sage, whispers of story and song carried through me. 3, looking back. Standing on the edge of Point Arena, the lighthouse shines south back home to those silky Santa Barbara beaches. Each breath fills my lungs with salt and shared memories. The roundhouse calls me back, where the big heads dance through time, speaking to my ancestors in ways only they understand. 4, unsettled. Those rocky cliffs and coarse sand, winter gray on a summer day. Somewhere in a dream, I sat on the shore and sang a song of a remembering end of life. The fire cracks through the fibers of another time. Cascade Head looms above, moonlit meadows with ancestors, home but not homelands. 5, today. Visiting the homelands, that velvet sand soaked in oil, sticking to my feet, my hands, my spirit. The wisps of sage dwindling with the sage beds, replaced by concrete and asphalt, condos and tile, condor calls drowned out by sirens and speedboats, those glistening shimmers replaced by oil rigs, and my eyes glisten as I reach out to Limu. I still smell the sage, still read the messages in painted cave, still hear my name carried by the breeze, murmurs and instructions, strength to carry on. 6, returning. Standing in the edge of the Pacific looking north, connected from my homelands to my home, the ocean sighs with each receding wave, and I see the same story all the way back to the Siletz Bay. Oil, plastic, consumption, floating on the shores, floating with the current, floating, and drifting past us all. While Condor takes me home and the city sprawls over the bay, Alcatraz Island reminds me of voice and resistance. I hear the clappers and rattles beneath his wings, bringing a song of renewal, a song of cleansing, a song of balance, and I open my eyes, looking out across the Pacific. And so I wanted to shift the conversation, and I'm sorry about the hard shift, but it's a short presentation with a lot in it, to talk about Indigenous science and connection to place. And so again, to remind you all, like those connections are what are the underpinning of Indigenous science and how we understand the world and everything. How many of you have been to Mary's Peak? How many of you all know Mary's Peak's name? It's Tachimanawi is the mountain's name. In this picture, I like this one because it has the shadow of the mountain in it, pointing out. I was just up there talking to some youth earlier, so I was like, oh yeah, that's in this one too. But that place, understanding everything around it, knowing what it represents and understanding the plants there, why they're there, the medicinal plants, also the food plants, there's all kinds of things going on up there. Understanding the spiritual nature of the place, there's a lot that is beyond just what people usually think of Mary's Peak or Tachimanawi, and that inform how people interact with it. And so I wanted to show you all a series of just different images of different places to kind of think about, like when you're looking at these pictures, just think about what you think of them, like what you see from your eyes, and like your cultural context, whatever that may be. When I look at these pictures, there's the one, this is from Bald Hill. No, this is not Bald Hill. I forgot where that's at. It's one of the parks in Corvallis. But that one, looking at Mary's Peak at the sunset, and I always, every time I see the mountain, I think about the teachings that were shared with me from local tribes, is what I see when I look at it. And I think about the connection to their ancestors and how I interact with place because of that. And the picture on the left, that's Mount Hood. And I think about the connection to the people of that place with the Warm Springs tribes and other tribes in that area. And I think about what it means to go to a place nearby for ceremony, for gathering, and how I interact with understanding what is too much, what's enough, what's okay, and when to pass on those things. And with that, when I look at these tools and these at what people would call cultural activities, maybe I don't know how else what to describe them as, but this is being native. But these are three different things going on in these pictures. But when I look at the one on the right, it's like I think about the teachings of the cedar tree that come with it. It's not just making a little basket. It's like those teachings of everything that the cedar tree gave to us for us to be here. And I think about how that was taught to me and understanding. I've never gathered cedar bark, but I understand that there's science that goes behind it so the tree is not harmed. And then we're able to use it in this way. The same with the dentilia shells and understanding the impacts of climate change on them and understanding how capitalism has skyrocketed the prices, and also knowing that those are really important and culturally significant shells to this area in the Pacific Northwest. And so not having access to them is a problem. And knowing that those shells are not coming from these waters, but we have to use them now, and understanding the whys behind it. And it's the same, like how much is too much to take from another person's land, because those are coming from way somewhere else. I don't even know where those ones came from, honestly. They did not come from here because they're gone. And then the other one, when preparing sticks for cooking salmon on, again, thinking about this, not only the cedar tree, but understanding what the return of salmon means in the cultural context, understanding everything that's necessary for salmon to survive, understanding if the salmon don't survive, we can't survive, understanding that those impacts as well. So when I'm working with these cultural materials, I'm not just making things, I carry all of those teachings, and they're part of all of these pieces too, and understanding them. And so that's where a lot of people are like, that has nothing to do with native science. It has everything to do with it from my context, though. And then these ones, most people would be like, that's a cool picture of trees, maybe, but but I know where this is. This is in Grand Ronde. And whenever I see that little hill right there, I think about all the time I've spent in the area looking up to it and all the teachings that the Grand Ron tribe has shared with me over the years. And like I said in that poem, some things I'm able to share and some things I can't. And that's one of those things, is like understanding what that picture means. And that's not a sacred site, just so you all know. I wouldn't put that up there. And then the other one is the Deschutes River, and thinking about all the connections to the Columbia and other water systems as well. And um, it was really hot that day too. I was just looking at it, I was like, it was really warm. And then this one is just a picture of like enacting those things. That picture is cooking salmon again, like understanding how do you tell temperature on a fire without a thermometer. There is a sign, it's been tested by Native people and it works. Nobody ever gets food poisoning, so that's good, right? And we know how long to cook the fish for, like how hot the fire is. It's not ready. Is it ready? It needs more wood. Too much wood. Oh no, spread out the coals. And so, but there's methods that we use to measure the temperature of the fire itself, as well as the temperature of the fish. And then those teachings about the ocean, that's my daughter right there, and that's the Siletz Bay. And there's a lot of food in that area as well. And I'm like almost out of time already. Oh my gosh. So I want to talk about my current projects now. So this one is from when I was gathering, or I wasn't gathering, I was with my Indigenous Oceans class, and we picked a little bit of the sorrel and ate it because it's really good and it was hot. But that's over at Cascade Head. But this project that I'm working on with some folk from engineering and Sea Grant and folk out here in the Siletz tribe is One Water in the Siletz River Basin. And so this one, we have a Oregon Tribal Water Empowerment Grant for to do community engaged learning about the water system and also data collection to help inform a systems tool we're trying to build. I'm not building the tool because I'm not an engineer, but I'm helping with these other pieces. Um, and so when I mentioned earlier about the salmon, it's also the health of the river. If the river is not healthy, the people aren't healthy. And this project is really connected to a much larger project that has to do with Lincoln County drinking water. And and we think we're in a really green, lots of water area. I know that the Siletz River, just from being here, is not in a good state at all. When I left the powwow the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, it's really low already. That is not good. And a lot of people think like, oh, if one of the coastal cities is having water scarcity, we can just tap the Siletz River. That is not going to be an option pretty soon because of all the impacts of climate change. And so with this one, we're trying to figure out what are some interventions that can happen through nature? Is it like beavers? Is it other things without overtaxing the river? What is actually contributing upstream in the whole river system, not just where the water's coming out to take and to put it into the drinking water systems. So that's that project. And when I'm doing all this work, I look at this river and I'm like, oh, here's some more pictures of it. Sorry, those are the water tanks in Siletz, and that's just where the water intake is for Georgia Pacific and the city of Toledo's water intake area on the river. Um, those are from last summer. The river was higher last summer than it is this summer, and they were already like, this is low. But when I do this work, it's still connected to the teachings I have about the river system and that water. And so that's my son down there picking up trash off the Siletz River and down in Siletz. And then that's my daughter when we were stopped by farther downstream and happened to be hanging out with the eagle. It was really cool. And so there's like a lot of stories and our conversations with the river that I think about when I'm doing that research too, because of the teachings I have about the Siletz River and the significance of it and understanding the animals that live there, the plants that rely on it. It's not just us for our drinking water, right? It's everybody. And so this is not separated from that other research. And there's like a really, I feel like, inappropriate way that people call that me search. And I'm like, that's not very nice because Native people are really connected to their research a lot of the time, not all the time, but some people are. And so saying that that's not real research because it's considered me search is like very disrespectful in my opinion. And this is the other project I'm working on in the Valley. This is in Corvallis specifically, cultivating relationships through camas restoration. And we have a small grant for this one too through OSU. And this is working on team building. So a lot of people, do you all know what camas is? People have heard about it? It's big in the Valley now. People are getting, they're like, yes, camas is beautiful. It is. Look how pretty that flower is. I love it. And the bees love it. And so with this one, I was like, everybody's doing all these little camas like plots and projects, but we're not talking to each other very well. So this one is bringing us all together, not only to form relationships with each other, but to form relationships with the camas itself. And the picture on the right is actually at the Letitia Carson Legacy site. And I had been talking for a few years about like, we should really, I wonder what's behind all that blackberries. That looks like a perfect spot for camas. And when it got cleared this year, thousands of camas bulbs from like, that have been there since like the ancestral time, like before Oregon was a thing, popped up and they've been buried there that whole time. And it's just amazing. And I'm still tripped out about it. And so we're looking at how do invasive species, how did that actually protect those camas in this context, which is really fascinating because they were under Himalayan blackberries. And so there's a lot of stuff we're doing with the camas. And this was the Indigenous Natural Resources Office students that we were going around like looking at the different areas that we were going to include in this project. This one is over OSU's property off of 53rd Street by kind of by the MLK Junior Park. I think this big one is actually from the Letitia Carson site too, looking at how big it is. It was amazing. I can talk about that one all day. I have to move on though. And this is my Intro to Native Studies class. That middle one is one of my kids too, from her first year last year. But this is from Intro to Native Studies. And so a lot of people are like, you can't blend the two. I blend the two all the time. So this is like, we're learning about colonization, we're learning about like local histories, and then we're talking about the beauty of like connection to place and how things are still here. And Joe Scott down there is with the Indigenous Knowledge Inquiry Project. I think I said it right. He came and talked to my class too about just camas restoration as well. And he was in this picture, I have that one in there because he's talking about thatch grass, because when we're planting them, some of the students were just gonna plop the grass right on top, and he's all, you gotta break it up, make it easier for the camas to grow. It'll still grow, but why don't you can help it out, right, by breaking up the thatch grass, and which is not good for camas. And so on the picture on the right, the students are breaking up the clumps in that one. And in one of their papers, they were talking about, well, first of all, before I take them out there, I have them watch a talk by David Harrelson from the Grand Ronde Tribes about camas restoration. And I tell them, like, you have to think like, he's talking about his ancestors and how they interacted with these bulbs. We are interacting with the descendants of the camas plants his ancestors cultivated over how many thousands of years. It's still the same, like these bulbs have been around for a long time and they're connected in that way. And so like handle them with care and intention. And so that's kind of what we do. So after this last year, one of the papers one of the students wrote, I was just like, that is so cool. They talked about how when they were breaking up the thatch grass, they were thinking about like how tightly wound colonization is and how you have to like intentionally break it apart in order for these native plants to grow better. And it just really helped them understand like the depth of colonization with native people through working with camas plants. And this is at the Oak Creek Center for Urban Horticulture. This is our second year that we planted them down there. And we have a nice little patch going at this point. It's not ready to harvest yet, but it will be in a couple years. And the other one I wanted to show you all was a little video, and I have time because I have time. I still have 8 minutes left. I wanted to show you a recap video from my Indigenous Oceans class. So this is an ethnic studies class. A lot of marine studies students like it. It was my first time teaching it, so it was an adventure for all of us. But I did want to show you a recap to show like how many partners are involved in that. And again, just because it's part of my own research and work. And let's see. Let me start it over, sorry. That's probably as big as, oh, here it is. And again, that one I wanted to share with you all for the, because it shows all the things that we did to bring together Indigenous studies, science research, Indigenous science, all wrapped up together in one in that class, and it was really fun to create. And so I'm sharing all these with you super fast. Like there's a reason why I do my research is grounded in the harmful impacts that I personally have experienced, as well as many other Indigenous people, and trying to think about how to bring things together a little bit more, because sometimes Indigenous science and Western science don't get along. That's no secret. And sometimes they get along really good, and there's ways to like work through all those things. And sometimes they're not exclusive of each other either, they're the same. And so I wanted to share some of my research that I'm doing, as well as some of how it interacts with my classes as well. And I was going to leave you with this last poem before we open up to Q&A. And this was from my 241 class. It was actually that same one last year. The people dance and sing and fish and hunt and pray, swaying across plateaus, gentle ripples and roaring currents, across rivers and streams and through rolling waves, desert sage, cedar, and tobacco, placed on lands reclaimed, carried through wind, from ocean to the big river, to streams, lakes, and lava beds, across rocky cliffs and open fields, beauty held gently in palms and in hearts, rememberings to bring healing, boarding schools' tears and genocide scars, people woven back together through basket caps and cedar skirts, wing dresses and shawls, sweetgrass braids and feather fans, shells clinking in firelight, drums echoing canyon walls, the houses return, and with them songs ancestors whispered into almost forgotten places. We remember and live. And that was actually for Native Americans in Oregon. Wow, that was like perfectly timed. I never do that. This is like, that's a miracle for me, y'all. There's my last picture. Like, thank you. If you can't tell, I like camas and salmon a lot.
Perfect timing. Well, thank you again for sharing your knowledge and experiences. I'm just going to hide this just so it's not distracting to any of us. And yes, online, if there's any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. But we'll go ahead and get started in the room. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Whitebear? All right.
This is gonna seem like a bit of a stupid question, but I've been thinking a lot about, especially like introduced species or non-native species that have been placed there from acts of violent colonization. Do you think that non-native species ever get homesick?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about that a little bit.
I asked her the same question.
Yeah, and did you ask her at the when she was on campus?
Yeah.
Because I was like, I swear I heard her talk about that.
I asked like all my friends that question.
Yeah, I totally think they do because they're away from home too, right? And there's more research showing what Native people have been saying for thousands of years, that everything is alive and has feelings and reactions and stuff like that, and the same with plants. And so I couldn't imagine like being away from home forever and what that would feel like. And um, I would think so. Everything I would think gets homesick. Sometimes people really like their new home though, and they don't. So it depends, I guess, on the plant. I think the Scots brims don't. They're horrible.
Thank you. Any questions online? All right, more in the room.
Thank you so much for that talk. I guess I was thinking, so in a lot of our Western science, thinking about the effects of climate change, there's a very sort of prescribed way that we might study it, thinking about experiments or field studies and looking at time series. And I guess I'm curious in your knowledge of being more connected with the plants and the animals and the areas around us, Are there additional things that you can provide insight on of maybe ways to mitigate or help with the current effects of climate change? Because I don't think they're going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I think I like that question. Thanks for asking that. Because we don't talk about like not consuming more. We only talk about consuming more and maintaining our current levels of consumption. And that's clearly what needs to happen, right? We need to talk about that part, but nobody will bring it into the conversation of like, if we consume less, like other than perhaps talking about factory farms, that's the only time, but with energy consumption, we don't talk about it at all. And most of the energy is going towards like the new development, especially with nuclear, is going to AI anyways. And so it's kind of, I don't think I don't know how people are going to get around it because there's no way. And so it's just going to continue to take away from the land and the waters and people. And there's such real life impacts. And I wish more people would actually spend time in the communities that are impacted. I did a film screen or series last year about extraction on native lands for OSU. We started with Life Over Lithium, and that was talking about the McDermott caldera and those impacts. And then the next one we did was Demon Mineral, and that talked about the lasting impacts of uranium mining on the Navajo Nation. And then the last one we did was we went to a more like, we could look at other things instead of just the negative. And so we did a screening on the Klamath River dam removals and showing like you can reverse some of these harms if you want to. And that one was more connected to water because there wasn't really a water extraction film to show per se, even though there are some, but that one we really wanted to show connected to like healing. And so that's that's I guess my answer is like, I don't know any other way besides to consume less. And people are not willing to at this point, unfortunately.
Thank you. Any questions online?
Oh, wait, let me say,
Yeah,
some
go ahead.
people are willing to. There are some people willing to consume less, and then all it takes is a private jet to erase all of those efforts. One flight.
Thank you. Other questions in the room? Oh, coming right to me.
Hello. A question that I have, and I think it's kind of related. When you think about the things that have happened in America to certain groups of people, one of the things I always think about is the things that happen to indigenous people first in this country. So I guess my question is, what advice or guidance could you give to somebody who wants to, one, gain a better understanding of what happened to indigenous people in this country, and two, how would you suggest to them a route that they could go about or take in making connections with indigenous people, understanding and respecting them more, their plight then and even in current day, the things that are still going on?
Yeah, that's a multi-part big question. Let me start with I always recommend people do a little bit of research on like the whole thing and then also like the localized context. So my favorite book to use and recommend right now is The Rediscovery of America by Ned Blackhawk. One, because it's written by a Native person, and two, it doesn't just only talk about Native people being massacred. It talks about that, but also like how involved Native people were with the construction of the United States, and also acts of resistance that were happening at the same time. So it's sad, obviously, because our history is really sad. But that one is my favorite book to recommend for like that bigger picture view. It's actually the one I use in my Intro to Native Studies class now. And then hopefully bring him to campus someday. That'd be great. But the other thing is thinking about like where you're from and like who are the local tribes and what's the history there, and finding that out. And I would say that a lot of times people go to tribal communities and are like, oh, not sure what's going on or how can I help? And it's like a lot of tribes are doing a lot. And for example, in Siletz, we found out that the entire water infrastructure for the tribal housing is better than the city of Siletz with their public works as far as leaks and stuff like that. And so there's a whole lot of things that tribes are doing, and people are like, oh, wow. And I'm like, one thing I'm always like, you could look on their web pages, and people are like, they have web pages, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, tribes have web pages. And so it's like they have a lot of information on their web pages about what they're working on, as well as their own histories, that how they want them told. Some tribes do not have as robust web pages as others, but I always recommend looking at the source, and also finding out like what are their efforts. And I just know what's going on locally because I'm from here and I live in Corvallis, and so I know what's going on with the local tribes because I pay attention to it a lot. But not making assumptions that they're just not doing anything, because I think most tribes are really looking at things like the impacts on their health because of extraction, or they're looking at like the water issues, they're looking at economic development. There's a whole lot going on that tribes have to balance and think about for their nations, and they're actively doing those things. So some tribes have tribal newspapers too you can subscribe to for free or for a really low cost, and then you can keep up in that way too. So those are just a few ideas.
Thank you. All right. I think we have time for one more question. Oh, we got one online. Oh, you don't have a microphone.
So Jacqueline in the chat asks, how involved are Indigenous people in the Alaka Alliance for reintroduction of sea otters?
Oh, that was started by Siletz tribal people. So Peter Hatch's dad started a Alaka Alliance, and Alaka means sea otter. There's two words for otter. Namanamux is the river otter in that language. It's in Chinook Wawa or Chinook jargon. And so Peter's really involved with the Alaka Alliance and helped reestablish it after his dad passed. He talks about that. There's a video on YouTube about it if you're interested for folk. And so they're doing a lot of work, and he has partners doing that work too. But yeah. And a lot of people don't even know there was sea otters in Oregon too, which is sad. And yeah, that picture was the only one that wasn't my picture because there's no sea otters to take pictures. That was from Canva. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, let's give Dr. Whitebear one more round of applause. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And her contact information is on there. So if you want to reach out for future questions or collaborations, there is her contact. And yes, please sign in if you didn't when you came in. Otherwise, thank you very much. And we'll see you in September for our research seminars. Have a lovely day.